Before you drift off tonight, imagine this. You're floating beneath a velvet sky, the stars just barely blinking through thick sea mist. A gentle current nudges your bamboo raft, and beside you sit a dozen ancient jars, each softly bubbling, whispering stories passed down through the tides. Inside, memories. Regret turned to vinegar, joy sealed in palm sugar, a childhood laugh pickled in mango brine. This isn't just a story about food. It's a journey through a world where nothing is wasted, not even sorrow. In the warm archipelagos of the Philippines, long before refrigeration or supermarket shelves, people found magic in decay. They tamed rot. They bottled time. They stirred their grief with bamboo spoons and made it taste like healing. You'll wander through misty villages where jars hang from trees like wind chimes. You'll sip sleeping vinegar from a pot buried 3 moons ago. You'll learn how sailors stayed alive with nothing but rice, salt, and stubborn hope. And as you listen, your heartbeat will slow. Your thoughts will loosen, soften, stretch. Because like fermentation itself, rest can't be rushed. It needs time, stillness, a little darkness. So if your mind's been spinning today, let it settle, let it steep. Tonight we'll preserve you gently in story, surrounded by brine, banana leaves, and songs that smell faintly of sugarcane and sea. You're safe here, you're held, and you're already starting to drift. Hey guys, tonight we travel far across the warm waters of the South China Sea to a time when compasses were coconuts and preservation meant fermentation. You're waking on a floating bamboo raft off the coast of what is now the Philippines, somewhere around the early 1500s. There's no GPS, no refrigeration, just the scent of the ocean and the unmistakable nose-crinkling funk of something bubbling quietly in a sealed clay jar near your feet. That's your breakfast. That's your dinner. That's your lifeline. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive this, because if the heat doesn't get you, or the salt water soars, or the ever-looming threat of typhoon season, then the food definitely might. Or at least your modern taste buds would surrender at first sniff. But don't worry, tonight we're not surviving. We're floating, learning, and drifting into sleep with stories of salt, sour, and the art of controlled rot. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes open to pale sunlight bouncing off rippling waves. You're lying on a mat woven from nipa palm, rocking gently. Around you, the raft creaks. It's more than just wood. It's a living thing, layers of lashed bamboo, thick cords of rattan, and above you, a fraying sail that smells like old bananas and wet rope. Your clothes are damp with sea spray, and your mouth tastes like you licked a salted crab. You sit up slowly, the world shifts. Your crew, about a dozen others, move around you with practiced grace. No shouting, just grunts, gestures, and the quiet efficiency of people who've done this voyage many times. Someone hands you a gourd cup. The contents: tepid water with a vinegar-like edge. It's not spoiled, it's intended to taste that way. It's been steeped with fruit peel and dried ginger. It's rehydration with a sour twist. You drink slowly, it helps. Next comes the food. A chunk of dried rice cake, fermented in banana leaf and slightly squishy, like someone steamed an old sock. Beside it, a dollop of bagoong, fermented shrimp paste the color of mud and the consistency of regret. And somehow it's delicious. You spread it thin, just enough to bring flavor to the blandness of the rice, just enough to wake up your tongue. And you remember, vaguely, that bagoong can last months without spoiling, years even. This is the sailor's secret. Not steel, not sails, but fermentation. Long before the galleons of Spain arrived, Filipino sailors were already navigating the archipelago and beyond, trading with Malaysia, Indonesia, China, armed with outriggers and jars of things that smelled suspiciously dead but kept them alive. And these jars, they weren't just food storage, they were heirlooms. In some families passed down like wedding china, big wide-mouthed earthenware with hairline cracks and wax-sealed tops, some carved with symbols, some left plain, but all sacred. You run a hand across one nearby. The surface is rough, sun-warmed. Inside, fish slowly turns into something else. Not rotten, not raw, preserved. You don't have ice, you have time and salt. The boat rocks again, and someone adjusts the sail. Wind tugs at your hair. Far ahead, the horizon is flat and shimmering. Somewhere out there is another island, another port, another opportunity to trade. Not coin, but pickles, pastes, preserved mangoes, jars of stuff that Europeans later called exotic, but you just call Tuesday. Historians still argue whether these fermentation practices originated locally or were borrowed through trade routes. What's clear, though, is that no Filipino sailor worth their brine left port without a few crucial jars for flavor, for health, for bargaining. You recall stories told over campfires of men lost at sea for weeks who survived on fermented rice and the occasional flying fish, of crews driven mad by hunger only to be saved by one crusted jar pulled from beneath the floorboards, of captains who swore the best defense against pirates was feeding them fermented jackfruit and letting their bowels do the rest. Your raft floats past a tiny island, just a speck of sand and rock crowned with 3 leaning palm trees. No need to stop. You've got enough supplies as long as no one opens the wrong jar. Because yes, there's etiquette. Every jar has a cycle. Some are young, tangy, bright. Others are old, rich, pungent. And some should not be touched. Yet. You peer at the sacred jar lashed to the mast. The clay is darker, the wax seal thick. A faint chalk symbol is drawn on its lid. A spiral. You're told it's bad luck to open it before the 3rd moon crossing. No one questions it. You lie back, letting the waves lull you. Around you, others nap. One man snores softly, another chews dried tamarind rind like it's candy. You think about how strange this might all seem to someone from a colder land, a place with cellars, butter, cheese. Here, cheese would rot in hours. But fish? Fish can last forever if you know how to coax it. Your eyelids grow heavy. The sun rises a little higher. A gull cries overhead. Someone somewhere cracks open a jar, and the scent, salty, sweet, unmistakably alive, fills the air. And you smile, because this is how you survive. With sailcloth above you, salt on your lips, and the low, familiar gurgle of fermentation at your feet. You wake to the sound of waves slapping against bamboo and a sharp, sour tang stinging your nose like a ghost of vinegar past. It's not unpleasant, just assertive. Fermentation has that effect. It's like the ocean in a jar, confusing, ancient, slightly dangerous, and entirely essential. You sit up slowly, spine creaking in time with the raft, and you reach for the morning meal without thinking. It's already there. A banana leaf wrapped bundle, still warm from where it nestled near the embers overnight. Inside, fermented rice and fish, a kind of oceanic porridge that smells like sour victory and tastes like history. This isn't about flavor. This is about survival. Sailing the Philippine seas in the 1500s, or even centuries earlier, isn't like those clean fantasy voyages you've probably seen painted on Delftware plates. These waters are moody, temperamental. One island might have coconuts, the next, nothing but coral and wind. And so your ancestors preserved everything. Rice, ferment it into rice wine or into burro, where it's mixed with fish or shrimp and allowed to sour in its own juices until it becomes a tangy, slightly fizzy paste that keeps for weeks. Fish, salt it, layer it in jars, let time do the rest. Vegetables, pack them into clay crocks with vinegar made from sugarcane sap or palm wine gone intentionally wrong. Nothing is wasted because spoilage isn't failure here, it's a phase. One you've learned to read by scent, texture, and sometimes by sheer gut gamble. You're handed a bit of pickled papaya, sliced into ribbons, gently crunchy. The sailor who hands it to you grins like he knows it's exactly what your stomach needs, and he's right. You eat in silence. Around you, others munch, slurp, and sip. Meals aren't events. They're necessities. And everyone's always tasting something slightly sour. Why? Because fermentation means safety. The acids created by fermentation suppress bad bacteria. Before microscopes, people learned that through experience. Which jars made them sick? Which kept their bellies calm even in the worst storms? And when you're floating for days, with no land in sight, gut health becomes more important than gold. You're taught early to recognize danger. If it bubbles too much, if the smell turns from ocean funk to grave mistake, you toss it. Not always, but often enough. But most of the time, it saves you. Take basi, for example, a sugarcane wine you've seen sloshed from bamboo cups and sipped reverently by fishermen and grandmothers alike. Slightly sour, slightly sweet, endlessly warming. Sailors swore it could cure chills, grief, and possibly heartbreak. Historians still argue whether it originated as a happy accident or an intentional act of liquid genius. Either way, it's everywhere. On boats, in villages, at weddings and wakes. And it ferments quickly, beautifully, without needing the cold or any fancy tools, just time, patience, and a loosely covered jar. You sip some now from a shared calabash cup. It burns gently down your throat and nestles in your belly like a sleepy cat. Out on the water, the sun climbs higher. The sea stretches endlessly. You spot a sandbar in the distance, maybe reachable by sunset, maybe not. So you check the jars. Your role today is steward. That means inspecting the cargo, not the weapons or sails, but the real supplies. The jars of salted crab, the fermented green mango mash, the half-full crock of sour banana peel vinegar. Each has a job. The mango, perfect as a palate cleanser. The vinegar, needed for trade. Villagers inland will swap nearly anything for it. You tap the lid of a sealed jar. The sound is dull. It's ready. That's how you know. The noise tells you everything. You learned that from your grandfather, who learned it from his aunt, who learned it from her father, who once sailed past Sabah with nothing but rice, salt, and faith in jars. That's how knowledge travels here. Not in books, but in taste. You recall a joke someone told around the fire once, that in a Filipino kitchen, you don't measure time in minutes, but in bubbles. 2 bubble bagung is fine. 3 bubbles, funeral time. It makes you chuckle now, because it's true. Food is language, and fermentation is grammar. You lean back again, watching clouds drift. One of the younger sailors, barely 16, asks you how long barong mustasa, fermented mustard greens, keeps once opened. You answer without blinking, until it tells you it's done. He nods solemnly. That makes sense. Everything out here talks, eventually, especially food. That night, the boat anchors near a cove. You wade ashore, stepping over smooth stones and broken coral. There's a village inland flickering with firelight. You smell cooking, singing, something frying in coconut oil. You bring the jars. The villagers greet you not with coin, but with gifts. Root vegetables, woven mats, new jugs, and bowls. Because the real goal, exchange. Your fermented rice for their wild fruit vinegar. Their smoked eel for your pickled radish. No one asks for silver. No one wants pearls. They want sour, salty, reliable, because that's what travels best. You sit by the fire eating fish cured in salt and sun, wrapped in leaves, dipped in sugarcane vinegar, so sharp it makes your mouth pucker and your eyes mist. Someone hands you fermented duck egg. You hesitate, then bite. Creamy, sulfurous, deep. You say nothing. You nod, and they smile, because that's the highest compliment here. Your belly is full. The jars are lighter. The raft waits by the shore, rocking in moonlight. And your dreams will come easy, because you've eaten well. And more importantly, you've eaten wisely. Morning rises slowly through a thin veil of ocean mist. The air smells of wet wood, burnt rice, and the faint sweetness of sugarcane smoke. You stretch your arms on the deck of the raft and hear the gentle plop-plop of water lapping against bamboo logs. The crew is already up, some checking the rigging, some preparing breakfast, and one unfortunate soul trying to fish out a spoon that somehow ended up in the drink overnight. It's a quiet, functional chaos. Your own task today is less glamorous, sniffing jars. Yes, really. Because out here, with no refrigeration, no preservatives, and no spare food to waste, the best tool you've got is your nose and maybe your gut instinct. You kneel beside the food jars. The sun hasn't fully dried the dew off the lids yet. Beads of salt cling to the clay surfaces like sweat. One by one, you loosen the wrappings. First, buro ng isda, fermented rice with fish, still bubbling gently. Good sign. Next, salted green mango slaw. A sharp whiff of brine and citrus hits your sinuses. Powerful but not angry. You nod. Then, tuyo steeped in spiced oil. This one's yours. You made it 4 weeks ago. The oil glistens with chili flecks, and the preserved dried fish within looks like it could still whisper sea secrets. And finally, the tricky one. Patis fish sauce. If this has gone wrong, you'll know. You remove the stopper and give it a careful sniff. It's perfect. Aged, strong, salty sweet, with that deep umami note that says, I'm not dead, I'm complex. You sigh in relief. One of the younger crewmates watches you. How do you know? You grin. If your face doesn't twitch, it's not ready. If your eyes water, it's probably done. They nod, impressed. Or at least pretending to be. See, fermentation out here is less science, more navigation. You navigate flavor the way you navigate waves, by instinct, by error, by patterns of smell and sound and survival, Your raft pushes off mid-morning. The sails billow weakly, barely a breeze. But there's no rush. You're island hopping, not racing. The plan is to reach the neighboring isle of Inasag before sundown. They've got vinegar, you've got burong haipon, fermented shrimp paste the color of rust, the consistency of jam, and the smell of 1,000 tiny deaths that turned into lunch. Someone once described it as shrimp haunted by their better days. You liked that. But what outsiders often miss, what those European traders, Chinese merchants, and later even the colonizers couldn't always wrap their heads around, is that this is intentional. Fermentation is not a last resort. It's the main strategy. Because water spoils. Fresh meat decays, but sour rice and salted fish, they travel. In fact, most Filipino sailors would tell you they trusted their jars more than they trusted the sea. You can't reason with waves. But you can coax a batch of burong mustasa into lasting a month if you keep it shaded, cool, and turn it twice a day. You sip from your morning broth, just rice water steeped with dried fish bones and a bit of tamarind. Tart, salty, restorative, like drinking a very confident argument. And you think back to the old stories of how navigators would test new islands, not with weapons, but with pickles. Bring fermented papaya, offer it to the locals. If they smiled, you stayed. If they recoiled, you sailed on. Diplomacy by sour fruit. Historians still argue whether early Filipino sailors really mapped trade routes this way, or whether it was just a poetic way of saying don't trust anyone who hates vinegar. But it's a good story. And in this world, good stories matter. You reach into your travel pouch. Inside is your own small jar, wrapped in banana leaf, sealed with wax. Your personal blend, garlic, shrimp, calamansi rind, and the faintest hint of mashed guava. You made it months ago, haven't opened it since. You crack the seal. The scent that spills out is dizzying, bright, funky, like something that lived, died, and got better. You dip a finger in, taste. Still perfect. You smile. This is why. You can survive with one sail, 2 oars, and a busted map, as long as your food is fermented. The wind finally stirs, the sail lifts, the raft slides forward. Someone fishes. Someone naps. Someone practices the ritual of jar shaking, which isn't required, but feels respectful, like stirring tea leaves, or fluffing a pillow before bed. By afternoon, you spot a boat in the distance, another outrigger, probably a fishing crew. You wave. They wave back. Trade? You pull out a sample jar. They toss a line, and within minutes, you're swapping burong labanos, pickled radish, for dried clams in tamarind oil. A fair trade, a delicious one. No coin changes hands. Just knowledge, taste, trust. You think of home, of land. There, fermentation is still life, not just for sailors, but for farmers, mothers, fishermen, healers. Pickled papaya is served with breakfast. Sour milk rice is eaten when teeth fall out. Banana vinegar is dabbed on wounds. Even friendships are tested with homemade bureau. You remember a village elder once telling you, if they like your bagoong, they'll marry you. If they love your bagoong, they'll let you run the town. That felt true. The sun dips low. Inasag Island rises on the horizon. You anchor by dusk. Fires burn along the beach. Children run barefoot, and someone is already roasting fish on split bamboo skewers. You bring out your jars. They bring theirs. No one speaks at first. You just sit, share, dip, taste, grin, because every jar here has history. Every bite, a passport. And tonight your bureau was just enough to earn a new story, and maybe, just maybe, a new friend. The moon hangs fat and low over Inasog, casting a silver sheen across the waves like the sea is wearing a wedding veil. The raft rocks softly in its mooring ropes. You lie back on the sand, belly full of roasted fish, fingers still smelling faintly of shrimp paste, and you watch the palm fronds shift with the breeze. It's been a good night. One of those nights where no one had to be the loudest, no one counted coins. The only currency was flavor, and yours was rich. You think about what you brought. A small jar of pickled banana heart steeped in cane vinegar and garlic. A thin sheet of fermented cassava hand-wrapped in woven palm fiber, exchanged for a pouch of dried seaweed soaked in citrus brine. You even traded a tiny sealed gourd, fermented crab fat aged in salt and calamansi peel, for a piece of cloth embroidered with a map that might or might not be imaginary. That's the thing about trade out here. It's not just food, it's impression. You're not bartering soup, you're bartering memory. And if your bureau is good, you're remembered kindly. The elders of Inasog sit with you around a flickering fire. They chew betel nut, sip fermented tuba from bamboo straws, and speak in gentle circular stories that take a long time to end, because the journey matters more than the punchline. Tonight's lesson, told between sips and chuckles, is about a sailor who once cracked open a sacred fermentation jar too early. A jar sealed by his grandmother with 6 banana leaves and a prayer. He couldn't wait. He wanted the sour shrimp early, and when he opened it, bam! A gust of fermented fury. The smell knocked him clean off his raft. His crew refused to fish with him for a week. Was it true? Maybe, maybe not. But the jar he opened was never used again. It was buried under a tree with ceremony, like a funeral. Because in these islands, fermentation isn't just cooking, it's ritual. You're told about the mother jars, those ancient crocks passed down through generations. They're not washed, not really. They're wiped, honored. The fermentation in them is considered alive. The microbial cultures have been feeding families for hundreds of years. You don't sterilize history. You feed it. You add new layers, new fish, new rice. But the essence, the base, that's old, sacred, and people say they can taste the generations. Historians still argue whether these practices are uniquely Filipino or evolved from shared Austronesian traditions. But among the people, there's no argument. The jar is family. The bureau is memory. One elder looks at you and says, "If you can't remember the taste of your great-grandmother's vinegar, you weren't raised right." You're not sure if she's joking. She doesn't smile. The wind shifts. You hear singing down by the boats. A low, rocking tune. Maybe a lullaby. Maybe a fermentation chant. Yes, those exist. Songs you hum while stirring fish sauce. Songs you sing to keep time while washing jars or pounding rice. Because time is everything, and sometimes the best way to mark it is melody. You think of your own fermentation song, low and rhythmic, something about waves and waiting. You hum it under your breath now, just loud enough for the jar beside you to hear. You packed it carefully before leaving. It's a small clay pot sealed with beeswax and wrapped in old cloth. Inside, something new, a wild experiment. green papaya, coconut vinegar, dried anchovy, and tamarind. You haven't opened it yet. You're waiting, not for a special event, just the right moment. When the breeze shifts, when the sky turns a particular color, when your tongue whispers now. Until then, you protect it, feed it, rotate it occasionally like a sleeping cat. You fall asleep by the fire with your head resting near it, like it might tell you a story if you're still enough. Morning arrives slow and sticky. The fire's down to embers. You brush sand from your face, groan softly, stretch, and check the pot first. Still warm, still sealed, still good. Breakfast is fermented cassava, grilled and wrapped in banana leaf. Someone offers you achara, pickled green papaya, sweet and sharp, sliced into thin strips like citrus spaghetti. You eat it over rice and dried squid, laughing as a small girl steals a bite when no one's looking. You help pack up the raft, refilling water gourds and tightening lashings. One of the elders hands you a pouch as you leave. Inside, a small ball of tamarind salt and a folded note for when you miss sour things. You smile, pocket it. The wind is favorable. The raft glides over water like it remembers every route it's ever taken. Someone sings again. Someone else naps. And you think about how fermenting everything wasn't just a culinary choice, it was a navigational one. It meant you could go farther, stay longer, be more generous. You didn't need markets, you had patis. You didn't need ice, you had trust in your microbes. You didn't need calendars, just noses. The crew uncorks a jar mid-journey, roasted eggplant soaked in cane vinegar and garlic. It's served cold over hot rice, passed from hand to hand with reverence and dirty fingers. You take a bite, and as your mouth puckers and your brain tingles, you realize something fundamental. The journey isn't about getting somewhere. It's about tasting everything on the way. You're 2 islands away from where you started, but somehow it feels like you've traveled through time. The ocean still murmurs the same songs beneath your raft, but each stop, each trade, each shared jar layers more meaning onto the journey. And the jars themselves, they've started to develop personalities. One leaks a little when it's too warm. Another gives a satisfying pop when opened. A third you've named Grumpy Tito because its vinegar has a bite so fierce it nearly made a grown man cry. It's silly, maybe, but on the water with the horizon stretching forever and the sun melting every thought into salt, you start to assign identities to the things you care for, and you care for these jars, especially the one with the new recipe. You haven't opened it yet. Still waiting, still listening. Today's stop is a bigger island, Batanik, known for its limestone cliffs and legendary Binurong Talanka, tiny shore crabs fermented whole in rock salt and day-old coconut vinegar, left to soak in their own funk until they turn into something that looks cursed but tastes like magic. You arrive late afternoon, and the smell hits you before the shore does. It's sharp, oceanic, slightly aggressive, like someone took a crab, a lime, and a lightning bolt and shook them all together in a clay jug. You grin. This is going to be good. On shore, the crab jars are already waiting, stacked under palm awnings, guarded by old women who weigh you with their eyes. No one speaks at first. You sit, wait. You open a jar. They nod. You hand over your pickled eggplant, wrapped in woven leaf. They unwrap it, sniff, and taste. One woman closes her eyes. You hold your breath. Then she gestures for more. It's a deal. But this isn't a market. This is performance. A silent ballet of flavor, scent, intuition. And like all performances, you can ruin it with the wrong step. A young sailor with you makes that mistake, offering a jar of underfermented shrimp paste too early. The reaction is subtle, a tightening of lips, a narrowing of eyes. No words, just disapproval. He lowers his head, learns, it happens. They offer no trade for that jar, but they offer advice. Wait longer, keep it warmer, don't rush it. See, fermentation isn't just biological, it's social. Everyone knows when a thing is ready. And if you jump the gun, everyone smells it. You're invited to stay for dinner. A stew of leafy greens, fish heads, and, of course, a scoop of fermented crab so potent it could wake the ancestors. You eat it slow, respectfully. It's unlike anything you've had. Salty, creamy, pungent, with a strange sweetness underneath. The flavor unfolds like a conversation. Awkward at first, then funny, then unexpectedly wise. The elder beside you chuckles at your expression. Sour as truth, she says. You nod, and she points to your still-sealed jar, the one you've been carrying since your first island stop. You haven't tasted that yet. You shake your head. She tilts her chin. You'll know when it's time. That night, you sleep in a hut made of woven nipa and driftwood. The air smells of old vinegar, salt, and the dried seaweed mats hanging from the rafters. You dream of jars, not nightmares, just endless vessels lined up along a beach, each with a different scent, a different sound when you tap them. You walk past them in your dream, stopping occasionally to open one. Inside memories. A laugh you forgot. The voice of a cousin who taught you how to seal banana leaves. The feeling of your hands in cool rice. Morning brings mist and a rooster with poor timing. You pack your jars. You're given a gift. A new jar, smaller than yours, with no label, no hint. What's inside, you ask? Legacy, says the elder. That's all. You tie it to your bundle, unsure if she means a specific flavor or just a metaphor. But that's how things work out here. Every jar holds more than food. It holds memory, identity, mistakes, and miracles. Historians still argue whether the widespread use of fermentation among Filipino sailors came from necessity, ritual, or a blend of Austronesian cosmology and sheer practicality. Some believe it was spiritual. Others say it was scientific, disguised as instinct. You sip a morning brew, sugarcane vinegar steeped in ginger and pandan. It warms you through and clears your head. The raft launches again. You drift under a sky so blue it feels hand-painted. A few crew members hum. One tells a riddle about pickled bamboo shoots and ghosts. You look at your sealed jar again. Still waiting. Still listening. You reach the island of Caluco as the wind changes. Slower now, heavier, almost as if even the air knows that what's ahead isn't just a place, but a memory waiting to unfold. Caluco isn't famous for its beaches or its warriors or even its fish. Caluco is known for one thing, salt. But not just any salt. Salt cured under moonlight, harvested from clay basins passed down through generations, then smoked over coconut husks and cured again with dried banana peel. It's not white, it's soft gray, flecked with black and amber crystals that shimmer like crushed glass. People say it tastes like the ocean whispered directly to your tongue, and to a Filipino sailor with fermentation in their bones. Salt like that is gold. No, better than gold. It's fuel. Because every jar, every glorious, stinking, fizzing, burping jar needs salt to sing. You land your raft with quiet ceremony. No horns, no drums. Just a shared look among the crew that says, let's not mess this up. The village is small. Circular houses on stilts, kids running barefoot, jars drying in the sun like fat brown suns themselves. You notice one detail immediately. Every house has at least 3 visible clay pots, and every pot is marked differently, some with carved lines, others with tied feathers, or dried vines or folded leaves placed just so. These are fermentation sigils, not religious exactly, but not far off. Think of them as the culinary version of family crests. Each household has its own mix, its own jar guardian, its own process. You don't just copy someone else's recipe here, you honor your own. You're greeted by the salt master. Yes, that's really what they call her. She's old, wiry, and has eyes that look like they've watched vinegar ferment inside people's souls. She doesn't say hello. She points to your bundle. You brought burro? You nod. Show me. You unwrap your sealed jar, the one you've been guarding since the first leg of the journey, the one you've rotated, whispered to, hummed lullabies over. She raises an eyebrow. You haven't opened it yet? You shake your head, waiting. She nods. Approving? Hard to tell. Then she gestures. Come, let's test the salt. You're led to a clearing where the salt beds shimmer under the morning haze. Shallow trays carved from volcanic rock, lined with sea-soaked clay, each basin a mirror reflecting the sky. Thin salt films dance on the surface like lazy ice. She dips a gourd cup into one of the trays and hands it to you. Taste. It's bitter, floral, and somehow nostalgic, like licking the air before a monsoon. You cough slightly. Too young, she says. Then she hands you a pinch from a nearby jar. It's warm in your hand, smoked and aged. This is the real thing. She watches you sprinkle it on your tongue. You nearly weep, because suddenly you taste everything. The dried fish from your first island, the eggplant from the second, the fermented crab from Batanik. This salt doesn't just enhance flavor, it remembers it. The saltmaster smirks. Good salt holds secrets, she says, and now she wants to trade. You offer some of your smoked vinegar with pickled banana heart. She nods. Then she gestures to a sealed jar from her own shelf, covered in soot, marked with a folded orchid leaf. You open it together. Inside, burongabi, fermented taro root, smoked and stored in fish oil, aged for a full moon cycle. The smell is prehistoric. You taste. It's tender, creamy, with a kick like a small, polite earthquake. She watches you chew. Then, with great ceremony, she gestures for you to open your sealed jar. You freeze. Is it time? You listen. And the jar is warm, slightly swollen. The cloth around it smells like tamarind dreams and coconut vinegar and something wild, something fermented just right. You nod. You unwrap it slowly. The wax seal cracks. A soft hiss escapes, like a sigh held in for weeks. You spoon out the top layer, thick, glistening, golden brown, from papaya and anchovy, dotted with guava seeds and flecks of calamansi rind. The saltmaster inhales deeply. Then she dips a finger. Her eyes widen just a flicker, but it's there. Then she smiles. It's not a big smile, but it's the kind you'd ferment for. The rest of the crew gathers. Everyone gets a taste. No one says a word at first. Then one of them, the quietest among your crew, nods and says, "That tastes like home, and the sea, and a fight you won without swinging." Everyone laughs. The saltmaster gifts you a pinch of moon-cured salt in a leaf pouch. "No need to trade," she says. "That jar was already a gift." You bow. Respect, gratitude, fermentation. That night, a celebration erupts. The villagers roast coconut rice in bamboo tubes. Kids chase each other with banana peel slingshots. Someone sets fire to a broken oar just for fun. You sit by the fire, a jar of burong talbos ng kamote, fermented sweet potato leaves balanced on your knee. You open it, take a bite, and feel your stomach sing. Because with the right salt, even leaves become legends. And tonight, everything tastes exactly as it should. You wake before sunrise, the faint taste of fermented taro still clinging to your tongue. The village is silent. Even the chickens haven't started gossiping yet. You walk barefoot across the damp earth, past jars lined in rows like sleeping sentinels, each one a secret, a story, a risk taken months ago, finally ripened. And now you're headed toward a jar you're not supposed to open. Not yet. It sits near the edge of the raft, half buried in cool sand to keep it tempered. It's your mother jar, the one you started on the day you left your home shore, the one you promised, out loud, maybe a bit dramatically, you wouldn't open until your journey's end. But this morning, the lid looks looser, the wax seal flaked. The air around it smells faintly of guava and something tangy sweet, like a sunrise made edible. You crouch, touch it gently, no pressure, just a greeting. And then, of course, you don't open it, because something in your gut says, not today, sailor, wait. You sigh, stretch, wander back toward the communal hearth where a pot of reheated lotto seaweed and sour fish broth is bubbling. It smells like tears and breakfast. You settle in, but someone else isn't following the rules. A new crewmate, young, a bit too confident, the kind who thinks vinegar doesn't bite, is fiddling with a different jar. Not yours, but one belonging to the salt master. You raise your hand to warn him. Too late. Pop! The seal breaks. A cloud of fermented fury punches the air. Everyone at the hearth freezes. A child begins to cry, not out of fear, but because she knows that smell. That's the smell of unfinished, of almost, of you shouldn't have. The saltmaster appears like a ghost conjured by funk. She doesn't yell. She simply points at the open jar. That was still becoming. The boy stammers, I didn't know. Exactly, she says, which is why you should have waited. She doesn't take the jar away. Instead, she sets it aside, covers it loosely with a cloth, and places a single stone on top. This one starts again, she says. It's not a punishment, it's a lesson. In Coluco, timing is everything. You learn later that unfinished fermentation is considered spiritually volatile. Some believe jars like that can draw misfortune or worse, bored ancestors. You also learn that among seafarers, there's a tradition of carrying a jar you never open. It's not for eating. It's for balance. A floating offering. A fermented talisman. Something for the waves to remember you by. Sometimes when storms hit or tempers flare or the fish vanish for days, a crew will quietly drop that jar into the sea. Not tossed. Placed. Lowered gently with a prayer. And sometimes the sea answers. Historians still argue whether these sacrificial jars were a form of animism, early maritime psychology, or just a practical excuse to dump spoiled condiments with flair. But whatever the reason, people believed. And belief on a boat? That's not decoration. That's structure. You ask the saltmaster about it. She nods. We always carry one. Have you ever dropped it? She smiles. Only once. What happened? We made it home. No further details. That night, you dream of jars again. But this time, they float in the sky. Some glow, some hum. One is cracked open, and laughter spills out like steam. You wake laughing, and you don't know why. Breakfast is rice porridge with pickled ginger and shredded tuyo. Dried fish so sharp it should come with a warning label. You eat it too fast, the vinegar stings your nose. Someone claps. You've passed an unspoken test. You pack the raft again. You add the stone-topped jar, unfinished but forgiven. You set it gently at the front, and as the sail catches wind and Coluco fades behind you, the saltmaster shouts something from shore. Wait until the jar sings. You nod, not entirely sure what that means, but you'll know, eventually. because some jars speak loud, others they whisper. And if you've been patient, if you've stirred with respect, sealed with meaning, and waited long enough, your jar might just sing you home. The wind shifts again, and this time it brings more than just salt and moisture. It brings memory. You sail toward an island so small it's not always on the maps, if you can call maps what most sailors use. Most rely on stories, stars, and sea-colored scars passed down arm to arm. But this island, it's special. They say its people ferment for the dead. You arrive late afternoon. The place is called Lune, which means moonlight in one dialect and ghost in another. You're not sure which is more accurate because the air here is still, not calm, expectant. A woman meets you on the beach, barefoot, gray-haired, smiling, the way grandmothers do when they know something you don't. You're just in time, she says. It's the week of the jars. You follow her into a village woven from driftwood and nipa palm, where hundreds of small clay pots are lined up in rows. Each one is covered in a cloth printed with family names, charms, or faded doodles of fish. The jars are offerings for the departed. You sit among the villagers. A soft drumbeat begins, slow, like a heartbeat underwater. A boy opens the first jar. Inside, burong bongus, fermented milkfish cured with rice and pepper leaves, cloudy and sweet-smelling, like memories just before they fade. Each family takes a turn. Each jar opened with reverence, each scent released like a whispered secret. You ask what it all means. The woman shrugs. We feed them, the ones we've lost. They traveled too. They deserve flavor. You taste a spoonful. It's earthy, sharp, with a sweetness that sneaks up on you. You're feeding your ancestors vinegar, you ask. She grins. What else would we feed them? They'd haunt us if we used sugar. You don't argue. You notice some villagers skipping jars, stepping around them, eyes averted. Those are the undone jars, she explains. Spirits that never finished what they started. You shiver, not from fear, from understanding. You've known that feeling too. Later that night, someone brings out a special jar, one sealed not with cloth but with woven rattan and a fishbone pin. Everyone quiets. It's the ghost jar, someone whispers. A young girl opens it. The smell is indescribable, like pickled mango, like old paper, like the space between thunder and memory. Everyone inhales once. No one eats. Then the jar is closed again. That's for the sea, the woman says. You help carry it down to the water. Together you wade in up to your hips. The girl gently sets it adrift. It bobs once, twice. Then it sinks without a sound, and everyone breathes easier. Historians still argue whether these rituals were a holdover from pre-colonial animist rites or a more recent invention adapted from Chinese burial jars. But regardless of origin, the intent is clear. Some meals aren't for the living. Back at the village, someone passes you a small cup of fermented ginger and sugar cane. Not vinegar this time. Warm, slightly fizzy. You ask what it's called. Tandan, a word that means remember. The woman clinks her cup to yours. To the ones we remember, she says. You sip, and suddenly your mouth is full of warmth, spice, and the quiet kind of grief that tastes almost sweet. You sleep under a roof of woven leaf, listening to jars crackle and settle as the night cools. In your dreams, the ocean is lined with jars, some open, some closed. You float above them, hearing their whispers. When you wake, you don't feel haunted. You feel accompanied. You pack your raft with new care, each jar placed as if it matters, because now you know it does. The sea turns glassy again, that weird stillness where the water feels like breath held too long. You squint at the horizon looking for signs of land, birds, floating drift, or jars bobbing where they shouldn't be. Instead, you spot sails. 3 of them, approaching fast. You brace yourself, heart thudding, thinking maybe it's pirates, or rival traders, or worse, Portuguese tax collectors with clipboards and vinegar allergies. But as they draw near, you notice the shape of the sails. Crab claw rigs, familiar. The hulls carved with curled waves and dancing fish. These aren't enemies. These are cousins from a northern archipelago, and they've come bearing jars. You meet them halfway, your outriggers bumping gently as greetings are exchanged with shouts, laughter, and the passing of roasted sweet potatoes. They're not here to fight or steal. They're here for the trade. And that's when you see it. Laid gently in the center of their lead canoe, balanced like a holy relic, is a pyramid of fermentation. 6 tiers of jars stacked in woven reed baskets, each marked with symbols, a monkey, a spiral, a star. They call it the Bahalanan crate, which loosely translates to whatever happens, happens. You like them already. They open the top jar first. Inside, pickled green papaya, so finely sliced you could read poetry through it. The brine is light but complex. Ginger, chili, palm sugar. You offer your smoky tamarind bagung in return. Someone cries, but it's the good kind of crying, the kind that means this tastes like my grandfather's garden. From there, the trading begins in earnest. Over the next hours, you exchange fermented shrimp with young jackfruit, berried green mangoes with wild honey, rice wine aged in bamboo sealed with lime leaves, and 1 jar simply labeled, you try that one. It tastes like a thunderstorm. With hints of durian and regret, you politely trade it back. There's laughter. Someone jumps into the sea just to cool off after trying a chili paste that could unwrite memories. You notice a curious thing. Each crew has at least 1 traveling jar. Not for trade, not for eating, just for the journey. Memory jars, someone explains. They hold the flavor of where we've been. Inside, a little of everything, layered like geological strata. Historians still debate whether this practice had spiritual meaning or was simply a way to not waste leftovers. But whatever the truth, it works. Because when you smell those jars, you smell time and place, and the quiet understanding that food, when left alone long enough, will tell its own story. By sunset, the fleets separate again. Before you go, someone hands you a small sealed gourd, tied with blue twine. For later, they say. What is it? They grin. You'll know when you're ready. Of course. Back on your raft, you take inventory of your jars. You've got 4 types of bagung, 2 pickled roots, 1 mysterious gourd, 1 half-emptied rice wine jar that now smells like adventure, and 1 mother jar, still sealed. And suddenly, you realize something strange. Every jar you've carried has changed slightly, not just in flavor, but in tone. The fish paste hums a little lower, the eggplant feels softer, the tamarind vinegar has mellowed, like it's had time to reflect. Maybe jars are like crew. They adapt, or maybe they listen. You close your eyes and imagine the jars whispering to each other as the moon rises. What would they say? Where were you aged? Who stirred you first? Have you ever been dropped during a storm and survived? You smile, because tonight you feel surrounded by trade, by flavor, by memory stacked in clay and twine, and by jars that somehow have become a part of you. The next island you drift toward looks ordinary enough from a distance. Just another green smudge on a blue map. But the moment your raft crunches onto its volcanic sands, you catch it. The smell, Not of rot or brine, but of smoke. Not from firewood either. This is cooking smoke. Cold smoke, banana leaf and coconut husk and some mystery bark that smells faintly of cinnamon and wet stone. You've arrived at Balo Balo Bay, known among sailors as the place where smoke meets fermentation. Nobody's shouting here, it's quiet. The kind of quiet that says we're preserving something that wants to be forgotten. You're greeted by a woman in blackened linen. Her hands are stained red, not from blood, but from annatto and beetroot and fire-hardened clay. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't frown either, just nods once. You've brought jars? You nod. Good. Ours are ready to wake. That's how they talk here. Wake the jar, like it's a dog or a song or a sleeping ancestor. You follow her past clustered huts into a long shed, where rows and rows of clay jars sit under thick layers of ash. Some are warm, some whistle softly as if dreaming. The rule here is simple. Smoke slows decay, and so they cold smoke their jars, not for hours, for weeks. The process is slow, invasive, meditative. One man hasn't spoken in 3 days, just tends the smoke, adjusts the airflow, listens to the pitch of bubbles shifting inside sealed pots. You ask what they're smoking. Everything, he murmurs. You sample a dish they call itlog ng usok, egg of smoke. It's a soft-boiled duck egg fermented with smoked tamarind and buried in rice hulls. It tastes like burnt caramel with a vinegar finish that flutters down your spine. Another dish? Kinilaw na usok, raw fish cooked in smoked vinegar and citrus. The fish was never near fire, but your tongue doesn't believe you. You notice no one rushes here. Even conversation comes in pauses. It's not laziness, it's reverence. You're invited to help rotate a jar. You lift the pot with 2 others. Gently, slowly, it sloshes inside, deep, resonant. Still fermenting, one says. Listen to the glug. If it sighs, it's ready. You swear it sighs at you, just once. Later you ask about spoilage. The woman shrugs. We don't fear rot. We partner with it. Control the oxygen, know the microbes, time your stir. She hands you a spoon, offers you a taste from the oldest jar in the shed. It's labeled with a single symbol, an I. Inside, you find fermented cassava cake. Sweet, sticky, and somehow bitter, like old stories told through molasses. One bite and you feel like you're chewing memory. Historians still argue whether Balo Balo Bay's methods were influenced by Japanese narazushi, Chinese vinegar houses, or pre-colonial burial rites. But the people here, they don't argue, they just smoke. Wait, taste, repeat. That night the wind turns. You and the other jar keepers light small fires under the fermentation shed, not for heat, but for clarity. Smoke rises. You smell. Pickled clams, smoked jackfruit paste, salted green chili vinegar, and that weird borderline blessed cassava again. You can barely keep your eyes open. Someone begins to hum, not a song, a note, one held low and steady, like a jar calling out through the fog. You hum back, you don't know why, it feels right. And in that smoky darkness, surrounded by people who believe jars can whisper, you feel something shift. Not your body, your pace. You stop thinking in minutes. You start thinking in fermentation cycles, in rising, falling, settling. You don't know how long you sleep, but when you wake, the sun is back, your raft is packed, and there's a jar waiting by the shore. It's been smoked. It's warm. It's marked with your name. You never asked for it, but you accept because you're learning. Sometimes the best jars aren't made, they're earned. The wind returns with purpose now, as if it too has caught the scent of something brewing. Your raft sails smoother, more confidently, like it's learned the path under its own weight. The ocean looks different, less like a barrier, more like a pantry. You're headed for Pulang Isla, the Red Island. Not because the soil is red, it isn't, or the rocks, also no, but because of the shrimp paste. They say it's so deeply red it stains not just your hands, but your thoughts. You dock among stilted houses rising like herons from shallow, coral-fringed water. The air smells loud. You catch sourness, salt, a hint of sugar, maybe calamansi, definitely fish, definitely fermentation. A man greets you, holding out a ladle carved from driftwood. He points to a clay pot behind him, gently steaming in the sun. Alig bagung, he says. Crab fat, fermented shrimp, chili, rice wine, aged for 8 moons and stirred every full one. You look into the pot and see a red so vivid it's almost impolite. He dips the ladle, offers you a taste. You hesitate. He winks. You've had worse. True. You try it. It tastes like a dare from a god you actually like. Rich, spicy, with that perfect creeping bitterness that says, yes, this came from rot, but rot with ambition. You nod. He grins. You've passed another test. They lead you to the fermenting yard, an open-air square filled with sun-baked jars under shade cloths. Some are bubbling, others crusted with salt blooms, and one is singing. You lean closer. A high-pitched squeal emerges from a sealed pot. What's in there, you ask. Green guava and salted anchovy mash, someone replies. It argues with itself. You laugh. They don't. Apparently that's serious business. The belief here is that talking jars mean active spirits, not ghosts, not demons, just hungry pasts, the kind that want to be fed and remembered. One woman shows you her family jar. It's over 70 years old, passed down from grandmother to granddaughter, still sealed with the original beeswax and coconut husk thread. I never open it, she says. Why keep it then? She shrugs. Because it kept me. You sit with that. Later you help stir a vat of binurong talong, fermented eggplant mashed with smoked garlic and shrimp paste. Your arm aches. The wooden paddle groans, but it's worth it. Because when the mixture turns silky and sweet-sour, like barbecue sauce with a vendetta, you feel it in your ribs. You eat it on rice. You eat it on toasted cassava bread. You eat it straight from the paddle. No one stops you. That night, the community gathers by the water with lanterns carved from old coconut husks. Everyone brings a tiny sample from their best jar, no more than a spoonful. They pour it into a common bowl. Yes, it smells awful. Yes, someone nearly gags. Yes, this is the ritual. They call it sama-sama alat, together in salt. Everyone dips their finger, tastes, and offers a single word. Bright, funky, regretful, courage. You hesitate, you taste. Family, you whisper, and they nod. Historians still debate whether this ritual began as a food safety measure or a bonding exercise, maybe both, but in that moment there's no need to explain. Because in Pulang Isla, flavor is memory, and memory is how you stay alive. As the stars bloom above, someone sings a lullaby about a crab who ferments the ocean. You drift to sleep by the water, full of vinegar, hope, and just enough confusion to be interesting. When you wake, there's a new jar tied to your raft. It's red, unlabeled. You don't open it. Not yet, but it hums, softly, like it knows you. You sail out at dawn, red jar nestled in your lap, singing softly to itself like a seasick bird. You hum back, not because you believe in talking jars, but because silence feels ruder now. The air is thicker as you drift into the next waters. The sea here is brackish, where rivers meet salt and the mangroves rise like wooden lungs out of the tide. This is Bebe Nung Itiam, the Black Shore. You don't see the village at first, only shadows beneath trees and the sound of bubbling, constant, low, organic. You dock on a muddy slip where your sandals vanish into the earth like it's hungry. The air smells of decay, not unpleasant, just informed. A young boy greets you with a grin and a stick covered in ants. "You're late," he says. They're already eating the black sauce. You have questions. He runs off. You follow anyway. In the center of the mangrove clearing, people squat around long troughs carved from tree trunks. Inside, black, jet black, ink black, glossy and thick like molasses after a funeral. This is taba ng uling, or charcoal fat, except it's not fat. It's fermented molasses boiled with burned coconut meat, rice vinegar, smoked banana flour, and ash from 3 very specific trees. It tastes like barbecue sauce mated with a volcano. You're handed a spoon. You dip. It coats your mouth with bitter, earthy warmth, and then a sweetness that arrives like an afterthought. Your jaw tingles. "Is it safe?" you ask. An old woman smiles, one tooth gleaming. "Safe enough for us." "Good enough." The people here believe fermentation purifies, not just food, but emotion, regret, anger. They jar their grief, literally. You see rows of small, black-glazed pots by the trees, one for each emotion. They're labeled in chalk. Guilt, envy, hope that didn't happen. Each one contains a dish, a memory turned edible, and not for sharing. "I eat my shame on Thursdays," someone says, not joking. You try a bite of pride, fermented crab claws boiled in tamarind and black sugar. It snaps between your teeth like an apology too late. Delicious. Historians still argue whether these jars were meant as literal therapy or ritualized catharsis. One thing is certain, no one lies to a black jar. Later that day, they show you the lumbe pot. Lumbe means sorrow. This jar is big. Too big for one person. It's communal. Whenever something tragic happens, they add an ingredient. Burned rice, onion, bitter gourd, stale beer. The idea is simple. You don't carry it alone. You taste it. You cry. But it's not a sad cry. It's a full-body exhale. You didn't even know you needed it. They let you contribute. You dig into your supplies and pull out a shriveled, over-salted, dried anchovy you meant to eat 3 islands ago. Instead, you drop it in the pot. Someone nods as if they know the weight of it. As the sun dips, they play bamboo flutes tuned to odd scales. The sound isn't beautiful, it's haunting, crooked, the musical version of a jar that doesn't seal all the way. You like it. You fall asleep in a hammock of woven seaweed. When you wake, you find a small black glazed jar beside your head. It has no label, just a tiny chalk X. You open it. Inside, salted banana blossoms pickled with chili and tears. You smile. It's perfect, and it's yours now. The tide carries you onward like a slow exhale. By now your raft has taken on a personality, no longer a vehicle but a companion. The jars clink gently beside you, some singing, some silent, all heavy with meaning. You sail into shallower waters where the reefs nearly scrape your hull. Here the ocean is no longer blue, it's aquamarine, glowing, full of darting fish and slow drifting jellyfish. And ahead lies Talanka Cove, the place they say invented patience. The village greets you with smiles, but no one rushes. It's not rudeness, it's the process. Here, fermentation is a verb with a heartbeat. They call it hintai lasa, waiting for flavor. You're offered a seat beneath a nipa roof, handed a cup of cloudy liquid. It smells faintly like soy sauce and low tide. You sip. It's taba ng Talanka, crab fat sauce, fermented for 50 days, stirred twice a day with a feather carved from bone. And no, you may not ask why it has to be that feather. The flavor? Umami bomb. Salt, smoke, a hint of sea urchin, or maybe just pride. You try to compliment the flavor. They interrupt. It's not done, but you're drinking it. They nod. It continues. That's the philosophy here. Every jar is mid-process, even after opening, even after consuming. The dish is alive, and if it's alive, it's changing. They show you their living shelf, a bamboo rack where open jars are kept at room temperature, carefully managed by a rotation chart, a calendar, and what looks suspiciously like astrological signs. You're not sure if it's a science or a game, probably both. You help stir a piña patis, fermented pineapple fish sauce. It smells like rebellion. They laugh at your face. You should have smelled it last week. Historians still argue whether this method traces to pre-Islamic Mindanao or is a syncretic blend of Austronesian seafaring and Chinese influence. The locals, they credit Lolo Rado, a mythical uncle who once preserved a whole monkey in guava vinegar. No one knows if he existed, but the sauce does, and yes, it slaps. After lunch, they take you to the Island of 10 Jars. It's not a myth. It's a small sandbar with exactly 10 buried jars, each marked with a bamboo flag. Each jar represents one of the 10 fundamental flavors in Talanka philosophy: salt, sweet, sour, bitter, umami, spite, memory, longing, hunger, sleep. You ask how you ferment sleep. An old man grins. Try it. You do. The jar labeled sleep contains rice milk fermented with lavender, banana peel, and sea lettuce. It tastes like a hammock in your mouth. You lie back, and yes, you nap. You dream of fish whispering recipes, of a coconut tree that insists on being pickled, of your own face reflected in a jar too old to be yours. When you wake, the villagers are playing a game. They blindfold one another and guess sauces by scent alone. You join in. Your guesses? Sadness with chili, ghost vinegar. Is this pickled regret? Not far off. The laughter is soft, not mocking, more like waves teasing the shore. That night, under firefly torches, you ask why they ferment so much. A woman shrugs, because nothing stays fresh. Then more quietly, but it can still get better. You don't forget that. Back on your raft, you notice someone's added a tiny jar to your stash. It's barely palm-sized, tied shut with fishbone thread. Inside, tiny crab claws floating in thick red oil, a note etched in the clay. Wait, 3 moons. You nod, whisper thanks, and sail into the dark, where the sea tastes like possibility. By now, your jars rattle with personality. They feel less like supplies and more like passengers, opinionated, temperamental, deeply aromatic passengers. You know which ones hum, which ones gurgle, and which one to never ever open on an empty stomach. Your raft noses into the estuary of Sabong, a region once infamous for piracy, now famous for vinegar that could clean the sins off a rusted anchor. Everything smells sharp here, like citrus and betrayal. You're greeted by a woman who may or may not be a nun. She wears a robe made of woven palm bark and carries a staff with a ladle on one end and a cleaver on the other. I keep the balance, she says, of flavor. Not ominous at all. You're led to a convent-turned-fermentation school where young apprentices, boys and girls, barefoot and serious, stand in silent rows stirring jars. Some smell like tropical fruit. Some smell like boot. You ask what they're making. Sukang bangies, someone whispers. It means feral vinegar, made from fermented sugar cane, aged in caves, spiked with wild herbs, and stirred only during storms. You didn't know vinegar could feel violent. You learn the stirring chant, 3 notes, repeated like a lullaby. Hangin apoy lasa, wind, fire, flavor. The vinegar here is sacred. It's used to consecrate marriages, cleanse wounds, and settle arguments. One apprentice proudly shows you a scar on his tongue. First taste. You wince. He beams. You help press sugarcane stalks into giant barrels. The juice smells sweet, but the monks add blackened garlic and dried mango peel. Then they wait. A year, sometimes 2, sometimes 10. Historians still argue whether this aging process was adapted from Spanish winemaking, Malay tradition, or Filipino funerary practices. The vinegar doesn't care, it knows what it is. They let you bottle a small vial. You label it for rage. Noted. You're led next into a sealed cavern, the sour chapel. Candles flicker. Jars line the stone walls like stained glass in a vinegar cathedral. Each one tastes of thunder. You sample one. The flavor slaps you across the tongue and makes your knees bend. They call it kidlat, lightning. You're told it's only stirred during typhoons. The apprentice who made it had to lash herself to a post with palm rope while the winds screamed around her. You ask if it was worth it. She's now the head stirrer. Fair. That evening, you're invited to the vinegar duel. 2 apprentices face each other across a plank table. Each presents their strongest batch. They dip wooden spoons past them to the judges, elder women with arms like tree trunks and eyes like pickled calamansi. They taste, they frown, they nod. The loser must eat 3 pickled bird's eyes. The winner gets to name a new jar. Tonight's name, Vindication. You sleep in a stone cell beneath hanging jars. They drip slowly, rhythmically, like clocks made of acid. You dream in vinegar. It's not unpleasant. In the morning, a final gift awaits, a jar shaped like a teardrop, sealed with wax and twine. No label, just an X carved deeply into the clay. You lift it, feel its weight. They say vinegar remembers. You believe it now. You pack the jar gently, bow to your hosts, and push back into the current, flanked by wind, memory, and flavor sharp enough to keep you afloat. You drift south now, guided more by instinct than stars. Your raft is heavier, not just with jars, but with meaning. Each clink is a story. Each lid is a whisper. You've stopped asking whether it's real. It's all real enough to flavor memory. The sea narrows. Mangroves tighten around you like curious fingers. You've reached Bayon ng Ala Ala, the village of memory. They don't wave when you arrive. They bow. You disembark beneath woven banners dyed with rust and smoke. Each symbol represents a fermented dish and the person who first made it. Here, food is genealogy. Every bite traces a line back to someone who dared to rot a thing just right. You're guided by a young archivist with ink-stained thumbs and a necklace made from dried calamansi. She leads you to a vault, not of scrolls, but of jars. A clay library. Each shelf holds generations. Adobong Luma from 1896. A mango preserve from the year a typhoon split the chapel. A bitter tamarind fish stew from the time of the floating priest. You don't ask. They believe that you are never fully gone until your last jar is eaten. And even then, maybe not. You're invited to the Huling Hapag, the last table. Here, descendants honor ancestors by opening a single jar per year and serving it. You attend the ceremony. A woman opens a tiny pot labeled simply Nay. Inside is a glistening black banana chutney with chili oil and fermented sugarcane vinegar. The smell hits you with tears you didn't plan on crying. She spoons out the dish and says nothing. The room is silent. Everyone eats. Even you. It's not your memory, but you borrow it just for tonight. Later they show you the House of Fermented Futures, a place where children create new recipes, things their ancestors never imagined. Pineapple and garlic paste, durian-stuffed pickled squid, coconut vinegar jellies. Each jar is labeled with the child's name and one rule. Do not open until their 20th birthday. They say it teaches patience and courage. Historians still argue whether this practice began as a wartime preservation tactic or a spiritual tradition. It doesn't matter here. The jars tell their own story. You're gifted one final jar, clear glass. Inside, pickled green mango and jackfruit rind in sugarcane brine. There's a note tied around the neck for the journey back. Eat only when you miss us. You don't cry, but you think about it. As you push off from the shore, the villagers sing a farewell. It's soft. It's crooked. It smells faintly of vinegar and burned rice. Perfect. Your raft turns gently and the current accepts you. Your jars clink together like wind chimes. Some hum. One snores. That one's new. The sky bruises into dusk. You don't know where you're going next, but you'll taste your way there. And now, as the last ripples of fermented memory fade into still water, your raft slows. The jars no longer hum, they rest, they breathe with you. The sea is warm and flat as silk. A low wind brushes past like someone smoothing out a blanket. The stars blink open, softly, slowly. Not all at once, just a few at first, like shy fireflies waiting their turn. You lie back on the raft. It cradles you now, as if it's always known this part was coming. The jars beside you are silent but not empty. They hold story, they hold care, they hold the quiet courage of people who dared to let things change and become beautiful anyway. The paddle rests across your lap unused. You don't need it. The tide will carry you now. There's a comfort in that. A comfort in knowing that even if everything sours, even if it ages strangely, even if it bubbles in the dark when no one's watching, something good can still come of it. Something nourishing, something worth sharing. So for now, let go of the oars. Let the water take you. Let the breeze sing to your jars. Let your breath slow and your eyes drift closed. You are preserved. You are remembered. You are exactly where you need to be. Good night. May your jars stay sealed, your vinegar gentle, and your sleep deliciously deep. See you in the next story.